Welcome to Notes from the Messy Middle. I'm Erin Gregory, storyteller, business owner, wife, and mom of three. If you've ever found yourself stuck between where you started and where you hope to be, you're in the right place. My hope is that you'll hear your own story in these conversations and feel inspired, because the best progress happens right in the messy middle. Hey listeners, it's Erin Gregory, and today's guest is someone I deeply admire, not only as a creative talent and colleague, but as a thoughtful, intentional human. Lisa Aller is a digital designer with more than 20 years of experience shaping brands for clients like the Country Music Hall of Fame, Augusta National, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. We first met while consulting with VA, where Lisa quickly set the bar for what it looks like to be a gifted, creative, and an incredible colleague. She's also the genius behind the design of my book cover, where she brought her own interpretation and energy to the visuals in a way that felt true to the story I wanted to tell. What I admire most about Lisa, though, isn't just her talent. It's the way she's learned, often through some very hard seasons, to prioritize peace and well-being in a world that pushes us to constantly work harder. Her story is a reminder that slowing down, leading into creativity, and choosing presence can change everything. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into my conversation with Lisa. Welcome to the Messy Middle, my friend.
Oh my gosh, what an intro, Erin. Thank you so much. Wow.
Oh, I couldn't brag on you enough, Lisa. Now, I'd like to jump right into 2025 because we're in it right now, and it just happened to be a year that really was the perfect storm for you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was definitely the perfect storm. In early 2025, my within a two and a half, 3 week period, my best friend from childhood and somebody I had known for over 4 decades had passed away from pancreatic cancer. My 19-year-old son, my baby, had been admitted or had been accepted into commercial flight school. And he chose the school that he chose was over 2,000 miles away from home. On top of that, we knew he was going to go, but he was taken off a wait list, and he gave me 3 weeks notice to prepare for that. I had some difficulties around my children without going into too much detail, but it was literally like my biggest, darkest nightmare, and it actually happened. And I'm a single mom, and in that time period in late February, there was a big shift in government contracting, specifically with VA contractors, and with no notice, I lost my job. So it was a pretty challenging season. I was getting hit from many angles, and it just felt like my entire life was collapsing.
That is a lot to handle. Any one of those things alone is enough. How did you hold yourself together through so much loss and change?
Yeah, so I don't do anything small, I guess. And I will say, having to process so many things at once, for me at least, it was almost a blessing. It didn't. I was able to process that all. At once. It was a big thing, and how I held it together. Um, you know, I didn't. At first, I didn't. I mean, it was really, I had to feel into all of those feelings. I had to go in and go deep and allow myself to really grieve all of that. Truly, I feel like the way out, the way that I was able to get myself out of all of that so quickly was by sitting in the feeling and allowing myself to feel without trying to escape from that feeling. What I noticed when I did do that, when the grief would come and I would just sit in it and not try and escape it, it moved through much, much faster than in any aspect of my life before. And, being the age that I am, I mean, any one of us, we've all been through stuff. You don't get through life without going through stuff. What I did differently during that perfect storm versus other times in my life is I would numb out. I would distract myself with, self-care, or, sometimes it wasn't so self-care-y. It would be, I would lean into things that probably weren't so healthy for me. So really not numbing out, really sitting in the feeling and allowing myself to process was really the way out for me.
I think it's so important to be able to sit in your pain and express it in a healthy way. And that's what we're trying to teach the kids too. If something happens at school with a friend or softball or something bigger, that you have to sit in those feelings in a safe space at home with us, or quiet in your room if you need to be alone. But you have to feel it before you can move on.
Well, it's in there, it's coming out regardless at some point in some way, whether it's by getting sick, because the body does keep the score. The body does process these things, the body can hold this stuff on, or it can process it out. That's so brilliant that you're doing that for your girls. And that is so lovely to hear. And I'm so happy for them. That's really, really wonderful.
It's something that I try to continue to learn. It can mean sitting in the corner crying, or whatever method is better for you, because to your point, it will come out one way or another, whether it's getting sick or through bad habits. The emotions are going to come out. So you might as well just sit there and let them happen.
It's 100%. It's, you bring up it coming out on other people. I mean, my daughter and I were actually having a conversation the other day about the league. My daughter is 17. She'll be 18 at the end of the month. And we have a lot of candid conversations about adult things. And we were talking about drug use and, the legality and that sort of thing. And in that conversation, we were talking about, I said, but you have to really understand, you're not just hurting yourself. Like when you hold on to emotion, when you do things that are destructive to yourself, not only affects you and your body, but it affects everyone in your life. And then some, right? By being responsible and taking responsibility for your feelings and processing those feelings, I mean, really, you're just making everyone's life so much better.
Yes. And you mentioned that control is an illusion in your interview. And it's just funny that you said this, because I talk about it in my book. And when you have little kids in particular, you know what it's like. It's chaos and endless physical and emotional demand and resentment, not towards the kids, but towards your life, because you're so tired. And at some point, you just have to give it up to God or your higher spirit or whatever, and accept that you don't have control. And how did that shift in perspective change for you in the way that you work?
Yeah, so I love that, because we don't. It is totally an illusion. And in my creative work that I do, yeah, so it really shifted for me. A big part of that shifted in this messy middle, in this big period. I started to realize that, you know, whether it's when looking for work or in the work or trying to control every single aspect of the work, the more that I let go and allow things to be in flow, using my intelligence, using my background, using my knowledge, that's important. But if I'm trying to control every aspect of the process, whether it's inside or outside of work, I'm removing myself from the miracle that can happen. Control is, the illusion of having the control, as we've talked about. It really is. It is an illusion. It's not real. It's the way I lost my job. Within 2 seconds, my friend passed it. These things happen in our life, and I think they happen for us and not to us. When you start to let go of the outcome of how things are supposed to be, and you can let go of the fear around that, there is so much beauty. There's it's expanded. The outcome can be so much more than you could ever dream of. You bring up a higher power, a God, that the higher universal spirit. I mean, whatever you want to call that. I call it light. Its vision is so much wider than mine, and really, I'm doing myself a disservice when I try to control, because really, if you lean into what the possibility can be, I don't know. It's all out there. It can totally happen, but it's going to be a lot smaller if you try to control what it would look like.
Yeah, and for the most part, Lisa, as far as I've known you, you always exude this great, calm, positive energy. And I know you're not always feeling it, but you practice it and you can tell. One of those ways that you do that is through yoga.
I do. Yeah, I'm yoga and meditation. I'm certified yoga teacher, and I also teach meditation.
Yeah, and that's awesome. So when did your journey with yoga start?
When I was in my early 20s, I had an ex whose mother had introduced me. They lived out in the San Francisco area, and this was like the mid 1990s. So yoga was pretty new to the United States, and so I was able to take this class, and I thought it was interesting. I was an athlete at the time. It was not. It was something I could not get my mind to quiet. It was something that it stuck with me for some reason, but it wasn't for me at the time. That introduction took me to my early 30s when I had started to have children, and I started to understand and feel the pressures of raising children. And I thought, you know what, that was an interesting thing. I'm going to go back to that. So I dove into my practice a little bit. Then fast forward to the late 2000s. I was going through a significant relationship breakup, and I felt very lost. I felt very disconnected, very alone. And I just remembered some of the things that I had experienced in my early 30s in the practice that made me feel some sort of connection. And I was like, well, may as well give that a shot, because whatever I'm doing right now is not working for me. And I dove into it, and I found it from a different place. It became a resource for me in finding, peace and some stability and some joy in a time that was really chaotic in my life. And then, so that's when I really dove into teacher training. And what I found in teacher training was that teacher training wasn't so much about leading a practice of yoga, but it was really that deep dive into who I was and why I was here. But it really gave me a grounding and a sense of connection to all there is, through that process, through that work. And I'm one of these people. I'm very ADHD. I'm always going. I've always got ideas. And the practice of meditation, I couldn't sit still for 2 seconds, much less, 15 minutes or 5 minutes to meditate. But I knew that when I did do it, something switched.
I think it's so important for creatives, entrepreneurs, people who like to continue progressing and moving forward, have something that forces them to slow down and stop and think. I know for me, I tend to work in chunks, hours at a time, and then I'll have days where I'm not creative at all, and that's like my refueling time. And you've done that with yoga. You've created a sense of peace and joy in your life.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, we get so caught up in busyness, right? Isn't that like the first thing that we answer when we talk to someone? It's like, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm super busy. Yeah, it's a distraction. It's a distraction from, from our purpose. And really, for me, being able to slow down, to be present, to lean into play has been able to expand my creativity. I mean, we're always on deadlines, and we're trying to do all these things that are in our heads. I mean, I am, what's in my head. It's like, I've got checklists and I want to do all these things, but really getting in and getting into the meat and really getting good at what the creativity part has come from being slow, from slowing down and getting quiet.
For me, that time is when I'm gardening and I get out there and I get my hands dirty and I don't have to report to anybody else. I'm not accountable to anybody else except for me and the plants. And I just feel calm and accomplished, and I can process everything going on in my mind when I'm out there. And when I'm done, I can relax.
100%. And I love that you bring up, digging in the dirt, being in nature, connecting with nature. I mean, I could go into what I know about the science of being around trees and, the resonance of being near nature, what that can do for you. But just like touching things where in our business, we're on the computer so much,
Hmm.
and it's great. I mean, I've been building websites and building tools and stuff like this for ages, and I love it. It's so great. But that piece of it, being connected to nature, being with yourself, doing something that it's just for you, and you don't have to get it perfect or right, and it's the only purpose is for you, and there's an outcome to it, right? You do it right, and you get everything going, and then you've got fruits of your labor that you get to see. I mean, it's just so beautiful. I love that, Erin.
Yeah, I love it too. And something else you said when you were first introduced to yoga years ago is that it wasn't the right thing for you, but then later on it became the right thing. And I think that's so important because we're all constantly evolving and changing, and our interests and our lifestyles have to change with us. So if something's not working for you, change it. And even though change can be a little bit scary, it's necessary.
And they should change. I mean, we should change. We should evolve. I mean, we're meant to do that. Fighting that, forcing things not to change. I mean, one thing I know of myself, I've struggled with is letting friendships go, letting certain relationships go. But we evolve and we change, and letting people go, letting habits go, letting thoughts go, letting all of that go and change. It is a beautiful thing. It's the way we're built. It's the way we're designed. Trying to force it any other way is going to cause pain, I think. And it has for me, if I'm honest.
Yes, absolutely. So, you also told me a little bit about how you carry this practice into your creativity and work. Tell me a little bit about your work and how that's evolved over the years.
Yeah, so I'm a designer, and I started my career at the beginning of the internet. I mean, when I was building, I was building tools, like interactive CD-ROMs and kiosks, even before the web. You could buy things on the web, and as the web started to evolve, I studied graphic design in school. I loved doing print work, but really my heart was in design, in the web work. So over the past 20 years, 20 plus years, I've built many different types of tools for communication. I'm a very, very curious person, maybe to a fault, but my work has evolved over the years, and I was a HubSpot partner for a while. I was really interested in the marketing and how these tools that I were building, these communication tools, all weave together. And over the years, it's really interesting because all of these jobs have evolved, like UX, UI, print design, digital communication, digital designer, I mean, all of these things have evolved. They're all consolidated into a designer, many years ago. It's so much fun. And now I'm sort of leaning into a place. I mean, I still love doing design work. It's still my bread and butter, but I'm leaning into a place of trying to help creatives find their voice, find their purpose, and find their path. There's so much distraction out there, like we've discussed. There's so many avenues. I think a lot of times, at least for myself, I mean, I had a really hard time, finding my voice, finding my voice, and it does evolve over time. But what's important is our human contribution to our work. And if you don't know who you are, how are you going to do that? So I'm evolving into this place where I'm helping people, find that for themselves so that they can be of more service in their work.
Yeah, and you have a speaking engagement coming up soon as well, right?
Yeah, it's upcoming actually. Next week, I'm headed down to my alma mater, LSU, and I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about AI. I'm going to talk about, getting students. I'm going to speak to the School of Design, and speak to the students about, preparing themselves for the future. But really, the guts of what I'm going to speak about is really digging in, getting quiet, and finding out who you are. Because as the world changes and things, the tasks become more homogenized, and they evolve these into automated systems. It really is important as communicators, as visual people, as storytellers, to know to understand the client's perspective, but how does my voice contribute to the message, to the voice, our clients are trying to portray. They're in their brand.
I know that's something that I speak with students and new graduates about, and navigating that next phase, which, whether it was 20 years ago or today, is still difficult. And college graduates are still grasping to get those entry level, quote unquote, jobs that require 3 to 5 years experience. So get your own experience, find your voice, start freelancing, start putting your own work out there, write a blog. That's the beauty of the digital age, is if you want to showcase your work, it's really easy to do so. So do it, and do it well.
That's such a great point, Erin. Think about the type of people that you've hired, the people that you've interviewed with. Think about, you want to work with people that you like. And how do you know if you like someone? You go online, you go and you see what their voice like, you go and see if you're aligned, right? People want to work with people that they value, that they respect, that they think that can bring value to their organization, or to their team, that they feel like they're going to align with. And that voice, that vision, putting that out there, that's really important. To your point about being a communicator and communicating the voice of your client. As a visual communicator, I got to tell you, I've studied graphic design. I love graphic design for many, many reasons. I mean, it is my heart and soul. And I was just telling a friend the other day, like, I don't think I will ever retire, like, fully, because I just love it.
Yes, and that's one of the best things about having basically a full-time freelance career, is that I get to choose the capacity that I work. And as I get older, if I want to scale up or down, I can make that decision. And that freedom of choice is everything.
It is 100%. So I studied graphic design in part. I took fine art classes, of course. I have a BFA, the design program at LSU. You have to. There are required fine art classes, and this is actually pretty funny because my daughter is an artist, but she's a fine artist. She can lean into that side. For me, that was absolutely so scary. Like, I liked having a box. Well, I still like it. I like knowing what my parameters are. I like being creative within a safe space. And I realized over time that was really, really boxing me in, that I was closing myself out. You wrote your book. I mean, it's so vulnerable to do that, and I think, sometimes we choose work. For me, graphic design, I chose this work so I didn't have to be so vulnerable, right? But that's where the juice is. You really have to get there to be really successful in this work. I mean, other than, being a technician. And for me, early on learning web stuff, I mean, I had to force myself to learn to be a developer. These things that had happened in my life, where my break, I was having a breakthrough, the perfect storm, right? I mean, these things happen. And if we take those lessons and we use them as lessons, those hard things, is, we look back and say, well, we didn't lean into our creativity. I mean, there's a reason for that. It does serve us going forward. So the time isn't wasted. I'll tell you, one of the things I'm going to speak about is when I was a student about to graduate, as a graphic designer, everybody was freaking out about desktop publishing. When I started my career, started school, rather, they were just starting to use a computer to do design work. Like, it was right on the edge. And people were out of their mind because they were taking jobs away from designers. Like, everything was going to the computer. You wouldn't need somebody to typeset. You wouldn't need somebody who knew how to use a photostat machine or to cut amberlift or to, lay things out in a handheld way. I mean, I remember going and visiting a billboard company when I was in college, and they were still painting billboards, but they were just starting to print. They were just starting to come out. And now, I mean, can you imagine somebody who has to do that? Like, that's not a job anymore.
Yeah, AI is going to make an impact for sure. It already is. But as long as you're willing to stay up with it and learn with the change, you'll stay relevant.
Yeah. So things shift, right? And I use this in the back of my head, this example. If you think about Cornelius Vanderbilt, he was a rail guy. He built Grand Central Station, he built the subway system in New York City. He was a shipping guy. Before he was a train guy, he was a boat guy. What he understood is he was in the transportation business. As designers, we need to remember that we are in the visual communication business. Like creatives, like the tools are always going to change. You
Right.
know, they're just always going to change, and the roles are going to change. And part of what I'm going to speak to the design school about is about the time in desktop publishing. The tool is going to change. You're always a visual communicator. You're
Yep.
always going to do that. It's just, the role is changing. So in design, the way I see things changing is students are going to really need to learn to lean into visual storytelling and creative direction early on.
When I started my career, it was in public relations and fundraising. And then it evolved to get into marketing and branding, radio interviews, and scheduling, which then led to strategy and consulting, which I absolutely love. So follow your career where it takes you and just continue learning along the way.
That is the constant. And I will say one of my biggest mistakes was, so when my kids were little, well, until they were teenagers, I did work for myself. I had a consulting firm. I built a business. And during that time, I was really focused on building my business and not so much, you know, formally learning a lot. I mean, I was picking up stuff. I was becoming a partner. I was learning enough to get by. Wasn't deep diving into the knowledge aspect. And I think that that's something that we just really always need to invest time in, the energy, the space. We have to give ourselves that space for formal learning. I mean, it doesn't mean going back and getting a degree. I mean, I'm leaned into yoga teacher training. I'm 500 hours, I've got over 500 hours of training at this point, of that kind of work. And it's just, I mean, and again, like, it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be exactly like you said, what you thought you were going to be. If you're curious about something, it could lead you in this direction. I mean, I never thought I would be helping people find their voice, right? But learning, and diving into something that I was curious about, it connected the dots for me. In my career. So, learning, moving, continuing to grow in that way, it is so important to your career, and it's so important to your own personal growth.
Progress often doesn't really happen when things are going well. And that's when we're supposed to be enjoying the ride. So when things are tough is when we develop character, when we build resilience, and that's where we really see progress happen.
I mean, do we move when we're happy? I mean, it's so much harder to make change when things are easy. As humans, we just don't do that. I love that, Erin. That is so beautiful, and it's such a great point. I mean, had my perfect storm not happened earlier this year, I mean, maybe I would have shifted, but not as quickly as I have. I wouldn't have dove as deeply as I had. It is such a blessing today. When I have a difficulty today, I lean into it. Like, give me more of it. Like, because it clears the path. It clears the way. Do I want bad things to happen in my life? No. But I know if things that I feel are bad, quote unquote, they're an opportunity for me to learn and make change. Because if I'm leaning into it that way, I know in my heart I'm going in the right direction for my own personal growth and joy and happiness.
Yes, get used to being uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's what we're trying to teach our kids and putting them in challenging situations, from drama where they have to stand up and perform to, different sporting events. So they're forced to be out of their comfort zone, because that's life and that's where progress takes place.
1,000%. And I'll say too, as humans, we think things should always be good and happy. And I don't know where we get that from. It's like, oh yeah, everything should be good, everything should be happy all the time. But like, life is about change. It's about waves of change. And like, it's just a part of life, and it's okay. We all have those seasons. You can't have, it's one thing that we talk a lot about in yoga is you can't have dark without light, right? You can't see light unless it's reflecting or next to or polarized by something dark. You don't know that it's light. You don't know something's dark unless it's next to something light. So you need both.
Yeah. So for listeners who are going through their own struggles right now, what advice would you give them to help them get through it?
It gets so much better. It gets so much better. I would say that, these things are happening, these hard things. If you can look at them in a way of an opportunity, if you can look at them as an opportunity for growth, if you can look at them and, just for a second, at least just open the door and go, you know what, maybe this challenge that I'm having can make me think about things. It can help me to think about things in a different way, and it can cause me to make my life a little bit better. That it does get better. Everything changes. Everything changes. You're not going to sit in it forever. Just like sitting in the feelings of the hard stuff. We talked about, really sitting in and allowing those feelings to come. The quicker that you allow yourself to just accept it, move through it, you know, I can promise you, just in my own experience, in my own life, every single time I've been in a dark spot, it's almost like a slingshot. You rebound so much further forward. If you can keep a good attitude, if you can try, and move through that pain and move through that darkness quicker.
Lisa, for listeners who want to connect with you after the show on social media or otherwise, where can they find you?
You can find me at lisa@bigthinkery.com, or bigthinkery.com is a great place to find me, or, they can contact you and you can send them my way.
I can certainly do that.
Well, I love talking about this stuff. Even if somebody needs some guidance, inspiration, I'm getting ready to start putting together some tools, for creatives to move through some of this stuff that, hopefully can help people. I'm just in service of humanity. So any way that I can help people move through their stuckness, and especially creatives, I'm here.
I love that, Lisa. So fellow creatives, find your purpose. It makes work so much more meaningful and enjoyable, and you feel good about what you do.
Look, I could talk about that all day long, Erin, because that's been a huge part of my path, is finding that purpose in service. It gave me purpose in life, in my career, when I went being in service.
The message we hope you walk away with today, listeners, is that we all go through hard things, and how we get through them is up to us, but what's on the other side is worth it.
100%. I know everyone listening to this can get through anything that they're going through.
Thanks for joining, Lisa. I hope we'll see you again soon.
I really appreciate you having me. It was really great to talk to you, and I hope what I've shared at least helps just one person.
Thank you for listening to today's conversation. I hope it gave you encouragement for your own messy middle. If you'd like more stories like this, you can find me on Substack and social media at Erin Gregory Creative, or visit my website at eringregorycreative.com. Until next time, thanks for joining us in the messy middle.